What's cracking, everybody? XehrFelrose here, bringing you some Pokemon GO Battle League content. In today's video, we're talking about some of the top teams you could be running in the Open Great League coming up in the next rotation here. Putting it forward a little bit early on Thursday. I did not have a good time this week in the Holiday Cup. I had the one good team that worked real well for me, and I kind of got myself rocked by most other things. So figured instead of trying to fit a video in here that normally wouldn't really matter, we're going to throw some teams in here. I'm going to do Great League teams today, and we'll do Ultra Master League teams in one video tomorrow. We're taking some of this information from my own experience, as well as from the training analysis page in PvPoke. If you go to pvpoke.com, on the top, you can see the training page. Go to Top Performers. It'll take you to this page. You can select your league, and in this one, we'll talk about the Great League. This is going to give you the individual Pokemon on this page, as well as if you scroll down a little further, you'll see some teams. Top team on PvPoke, as far as that's concerned, is Shadow Dragonair Carbink Medicham. That's basically a, play out the front, lead matchup, and then RPS in the back line with Carbink and Medicham. And if anybody thinks that for some reason Medicham still isn't really good, reality check. Even though it's not as dominant as it was, it's still very, very strong. It's on a lot of teams. You can see Medicham is in like at least 6 or 7 of these teams here. So you can get a lot of cool team ideas if you're struggling, but we'll take a look at 5 other teams that I didn't see on this list that I think would be good. And we'll start with the first one, which will be Whiscash, Skarmory, Sableye. And you could swap the Sableye out for a Dragonair, Shadow Dragonair if you have one, be preferred, but you don't have to use it. I did a video on that team actually a couple weeks ago in the Great League, so go check that out. If you haven't already seen it, very strong team. Whiscash is absolutely dominant with Scald in that update. Skarmory with Steel Wing is just, it's very, you either win the matchup really hard or you lose it really hard, right? Like, you get a Bastiodon, done. We top left. But if there's something like a Superior, grass type something, that's what you're trying to avoid with the Whiscash. And that'll be an easy dub for the Skarmory. But you can also use something like Talonflame. Really, any flyer fits that spot. So let's take a look at this team here. Really, really strong coverage on the meta overall. There are definitely going to be some core breakers to every team. Obviously, not every team can beat everything in the meta, Mandibuzz being the one that jumps off the page at me right away. But if Mandibuzz, Greninja, and Alolan Sandshrew are the only 3 things that beat this entire team on paper, I'd say that's pretty good. And like I said, you don't have to run Skarmory, you don't have to run Sableye. You could swap the Whiscash out for a Swampert if you don't have one. This is a very plug-and-play team as long as you fit the bill of, really strong anti-grass flyer, very safe swap in the back in case you have a bad lead with Whiscash, like if you lead into a grass type, for example. And then Whiscash in the lead could be Swampert, could be any of the Mud Boys that are really good in this season. So all of those will fit the bill here. And you can see it's got really good coverage on the meta. I like this team a lot. I think it could be a very strong one, although it is very rock, paper, scissors, yes. So it's like if you lose the lead, you lose switch, and you can't win alignment, and the opponent has an answer to your flyer in the back as well, you do just kind of lose that, unfortunately. So not as dynamic as some teams, but it's still a good team nonetheless. Let's take a look at team number 2. So getting into this next team here, this is the team that I hit Legend with last season, and I tried it this season after all the updates, and it still felt very strong. After seeing how the meta has unfolded, I still think Dugong is a super strong safe swap. I will not back down. It is one of my favorite safe swaps in the Open Great League. And as you all know by now, Skeledirge, I'm a simp for Skeledirge, okay? It's like my signature Pokemon at this point. And Superior is good and isn't good, right? Like, it's super, super strong. And if you have a Skarmory problem, you could do with maybe swapping out the Superior for Credilli is an option. And you could also swap it out for something like Venusaur or Jumpluff to get similar coverages. And I think those are going to be really the only things you want to sub out for that. Dugong, if you want to, you could try running something like Walrein, I guess, to get the same coverages. Do not safe swap Alolan Sandslash. Just don't do it. You could use really any pivot that's super safe. I just really like Dugong because it really draws out the Medichams for Skeledirge to get that nice farm down. But there's not really any drawing out Skarmory, which maybe if you needed to alter the team a bit, you could put, the Shadow Dragonair back there, or something that would lure out a Skarmory while giving you an opportunity to fight back against it as well. So that's going to be this team here. Very strong coverage on the meta, but obviously has some weaknesses, right? It's ABA weak to Bastiodon. It's ABA weak to Lantern, right? Those are manageable with Dugong, but it's not exactly a shoe-in sort of safe swap matchup. You really have to try to finesse and hope that your opponent they have something you can exploit. They make a mistake, or they have something in the back that allows you to get a good advantage somewhere. Like, that's the kind of stuff. This is a balanced team, right? It's also not going to be one you use to draw out an opponent. Like, the Dugong draws out the Medicham, but it's not like you're drawing out the Medicham for Superior to sweep. You're drawing out the Medicham for Skeleturge to get energy it needs to overcome those bad lead matchups. Like, you lead into Lantern, you swap in your Dugong, and you're hoping that you lure out like Medicham or something that Skeleturge can farm down so it can hit that Lantern back with a Shadow Ball or something. That's kind of what the strategy is with this team. Is balanced, though. So, you know, like I said, has good coverage, and honestly, Bastiodon is really the worst thing that you're going to see. Everything else on this team has play against everything in the meta in some degree or not. You know, you're not going to see too many Como-Os, Sneaslers, or Magcargos. Vigoroth, you know, obviously got that new buff, but that's one of the top issues for this team, but I imagine that Skeleturge obviously does very well against it due to it double resisting Body Slam and counter, and Superior can tangle with it too. It's not too bad. So let's take a look at another team. So this one we've seen in various iterations, right? Deoxys Double Ice is not something that's new, but we've swapped in the Arctibax here. If you don't want to run Arctibax, totally okay. If you don't have one, that's fine. I don't expect everyone to have one. If you have an Alolan Sandslash, that works. If you want to use another Ice type as well. And we have Dugong as well. That Dugong is really the staple of this team, though. But you could use an Umbreon, you could use a Lickitung, you could use whatever you really want to draw out a fighter like Medicham so that Deoxys can get rid of it, so that the ice in the back that is in place of Arctibax, like your Alolan Sandslash or whatever you're using in that slot, can sweep with shield advantage, hopefully. Otherwise, Deoxys, very strong in this meta, able to use able to use its energy to hit a lot of things for a lot of good ways of damage. Psycho Boost has a quick, burst damage sort of ability. So we're taking a look at the meta overall here. And Cresselia has really kind of risen on the rankings. I should probably look into that a little more. Like, Cresselia looks interesting, right? The problem with Cresselia, though, is that it gets walled by things like Skarmory and even Talonflame if it's not running Future Sight, which, it's not a need to have sort of thing for Great League, but if it's that high on the rankings, maybe you could use it instead of the Deoxys, for example. It's something that's very strong, beats a lot of the fighters, right? So the thing with Deoxys, though, it's like it's the psychic fighter that beats Medicham, which is what it really shines as in the Great League. So take a look at some of the meta here. Carbink, obviously, when you involve the Arctibax, Carbink is really a big issue for this team. You kind of have to deal with it with Deoxys and kind of team, make a team effort around it. So that's kind of why I think that Arctibax is a very specific sort of use case when you don't see things like Carbink. Then maybe the Alolan Sandslash probably would be the best fit for this team from my perspective, but it's one of those things where you can absolutely plug and play. You could throw the Lickitung, you could throw, really anything. Like, Deoxys is such a safe Pokemon that you can really plug and play a lot of these things. So don't feel like you have to run this team exactly the way it is. It's just a baseline. If you have it, it's a very fun team. Dragons are super strong in the meta right now, so it's still worth a shot if you have it. And if not, we'll take a look at the next team. So, good friend of mine, Greg, he ran this team last season. I think he ran it this season too. And he slaps people with it. It's so good. It's such a strong team. You could consider also running Hydro Pump on your Azumarill. You probably have to deal with the fire types, right? But I mean, Azu Double Steel is a very strong thing. Obviously Azumarill is able to handle those fighting types as well as the fire types, which are two of the hugest issues for the Steels in the back. Registeel is Registeel. It's a great safe swap. This entire team has really good strong play against the meta. You have to be careful of things like Lantern. You need shields to deal with Lantern, because obviously you can't let your Azumarill be up against the Lantern. You just get slapped. Clodsire can core break the team, but again, having ice damage on both, having ice damage on the Sandslash, having Hydro Pump on the Azumarill, hopefully that'll give you enough play to be able to defeat Clodsires and things. But really, like, minimal other things in this meta, that can really, make this team struggle, right? But you have to be able to finesse. This is a very finesse-like team. Like, you don't just play the matchups out and just expect to win because you win matchups and things. Like, this is definitely one of those teams where you have to try and maneuver your Sand Slash into the right spot so that it doesn't get clapped by things that it normally would get clapped by, like fire types or fighting types. You just have to be able to try and, like, this is definitely not a hard team to play. Obviously, it's ABB, it's Steel, it's got that use a safe swap to Registeel to draw something out that beats your Sand Slash. But depending on the meta, right, you just want to make sure that you're careful with the matchups that you're playing. Remember to use chip and dip strategies and things as needed to overcome tough things like Trevenant, Lantern, Clodsire, etc. So it's going to be that team. Very strong team. I highly recommend it. Let's look at the final team, a little bit more of a meta team that honestly I only put it here because some people like that stuff. Gligar, Lickitung, Medicham. It's a very, very strong meta team. Medicham and Lickitung are two good answers to the ice types, and also pretty strong against water types that give Gligar some issues. And it does play a bit more like a balanced team, but it's very strong in that you have three very solid, powerful Pokemon that are very consistent and can overcome a lot of bad matchups just because they're so safe, right? So Cresselia, I'm not worried so much about Cresselia. Skarmory could be an issue, yes. But I have played out the matchup with Lickitung, and I have not played Medicham very much at all, so I couldn't say for sure how that matchup goes, but I have to reckon that if you play like Dynamic Punch or Power Punch or Ice Punch, you have a shot to play that matchup through. Maybe in the 2 shields you have a better situation, but even Gligar, right, has a not so awful time against Skarmory if it's up energy. There's all kinds of stuff that could alter that, but Skarmory by itself, you just want to be able to try and maneuver around that matchup. But other than that, everything else in here feels like it's doable. This team, the things that are on the list of core breakers, right? Talonflame, okay, but it's still, like, everything on here is manageable. It just obviously beats everything one-on-one on paper, but not necessarily going to mean that the whole team just gets rolled just because you see it, right? Use your discretion. Make sure that you're doing your best to, use your team, trying to catch some energy, try to use those tactics to try and put things in your favor in those awkward matchups. But that's going to be it for this video, everybody. I really appreciate you, and I hope that these teams do help climb. Again, if you don't want to use the 5 teams that I've listed, once again, you can just go straight back to the training page. There's tons of great ideas here on this page to try if you're kind of stuck and not sure what to use. But that's going to do it for me for today, folks. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.